What's up, beautiful people? So today I'm going to show you how to resize a Crimsafe fly screen door by dismantling it, recutting it at the mitres to the size you want and putting it back together. Now these cost me 200 bucks second hand, and that's the reason why I'm resizing them, is because they don't fit perfectly. But for the sake of what they cost brand new, these brand new custom fitted are about 1,700 bucks. So if you can buy them secondhand and resize them yourself, it's well worth saving the money. But it's not easy to resize, but it's doable, and I'm going to show you how to do it today. So I've already done one yesterday, and I cut it at this end, and you can see I got the cuts pretty damn good. You know, they're not perfect, but for the sake of the money that I'm saving, it's definitely well worth doing it. So this side here, the right side, I still need to do today. I need to cut off about 150 mil here, so it fits perfectly. Once I've got them both cut to size, I'll be installing this angle on the edge of the door, and it hooks into this here in there, and that stops the doors from oversliding. So let's get into it. Okay, so in my case, I'm only changing the width of the door. So I'm gonna start by drilling out these rivets right here, and the rivets right here. I'm leaving these rivets here and here because there is a piece of angle inside this frame which holds it together with the rivets. And I'm going to leave the piece of angle in this piece here because I'm not cutting this piece. I'm only cutting this piece and this piece here. I'm going to be cutting about 88 mil off there and there. So the only rivets I need to drill out are the ones on this panel and the other one down there. So these rivets will be 4.8s, which means the hole will be 5 mil. So you want to drill them out with a 5 mil drill bit. So here we go. Go. Okay, so as you can see, even though we've removed the lip of the rivet, the inside of the rivet is still actually catching on the frame. So this rivet is still attached to the angle inside, and it's still lipping on the frame. So if you try and push this angle outwards, it's still going to catch. So what we need to do is completely drill these rivets out, so there's no lip catching. There we go. Okay, so once the rivets are removed on both sides, the next thing we want to do is remove the wheel on both sides. And these wheels are a bit tricky to get out, but they're just a plastic, it's a plastic sort of tooth that actually holds them in. And the best way to remove them is we actually go, let me see if I get a little closer with this, is there's little springs inside here and there. So the best way to do it is we just want to push in the plastic spring this way. So it's just catching on it there. I'm going to push it in, and I'm going to twist it, and it should come out. Let's do it on both sides. You need something thin like this tool I've got here. A flathead screwdriver should do it for you. Okay. Oh. See, right now I've popped the other one in, but now I need to get both of them. Pop the other side back in by accident. So the thing is, you want to get these just so there's enough room. There we go. Okay, so once you've got both sides done, then you should be able to pop it out like that. So you can see these are the little plastic sort of springs on either side that you need to push in order to get the wheel out. Now, in an ideal world, you'd use a drop saw to cut these mitres and get them nice and perfect. And a drop saw would look like this with an aluminium blade. But to recut these doors with a drop saw, you'd have to dismantle all 4 corners, which is a lot of effort. The way that I'm doing it, I'm only dismantling one side, which is much easier and faster, but the cuts won't be that accurate. So ideally, if you wanted to dismantle all 4 sides and use a drop saw, fair enough. The way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to use an angle grinder just to save the effort of dismantling the extra two sides, because these things are built very strong. The Crimsafe doors are made so criminals can't get through them, and they're not easy to pull apart. So if you can avoid dismantling all four sides, I think it's definitely a win. Okay, so now that the wheel's removed, if you look inside, you have a little torch here. Okay, you can see a little brace. Let's see if I can get a better look at that for you guys. There we go. You can see an aluminium brace, a little angle that's bracing the frame together there. We want to try and hit that brace out with this tool that I prepared earlier. This is just a piece of rod about 40 centimeters long, it's about 12 mil rod. And I've just cut this shape on it so you can put it through the wheel hole, and it's going to go in on an angle, and this shape here is going to hit the actual brace, the angle inside, which is, it's about there. It's coming about here to about here. That's the size of it. So what we want to do is try and hit that corner of it with this angle in through this wheel hole. So it's going to fit in like that until we hit that brace, and then I'm going to hit it with a hammer. And I'm going to do both sides bit by bit till we push out this panel here. All right, so you can see where we have been hitting the brace with this metal pole, and might be able to pull it out just a bit. There we go. You can see that it's been coming through here and it's been bashing it right there, and that's the sweet spot. That's where you want to hit it, right there. Okay, so now that we've got this one panel off, we want to pull out this plastic wedge, I'd call it, because it actually wedges the serrations on it. There's teeth on it that actually wedge this mesh into the actual frame. So take that out and leave the other piece in. And the idea now is to cut both sides, put it back together, and put the mesh in that groove. And then we finish it off by hammering this wedge, plastic wedge with the teeth back in it, and that secures the mesh to the frame. Okay, so now I've put some masking tape on the frame there so it's easy to mark with a pen. And I've just got a ruler, and I have just gone like this, and I've measured 88 mil. So you can see that 88 mil, and you want to measure this as accurately as you can. Okay, so the best way to cut straight with an angle grinder is you want to make a track for it to run along, basically a surface that you can actually brush the blade along, which will cut whatever you're cutting straight. And this is a piece of scrap metal. It's about 8 to 10 mil thick, and it's got a straight edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it here, and I'm going to clamp it with this clamp, and that way it won't move, and I can actually brush along the metal with the angle grinder, and I'll get a nice straight cut. Also, if you don't want to scratch the frame, masking tape is your best friend. So I always try and put tape underneath anything that I am actually going to be clamping so it doesn't scratch it. So there we go. Now when you cut this, you want to make sure you've got the angle grinder blade, perfectly vertical, because if you're like this, it's going to cut odd on the other side, or vice versa the other way. I've cut a lot of things with an angle grinder. I'm pretty confident that I cut things pretty true, but if you don't, what I would suggest is actually just cutting it halfway, and then actually getting a square, popping your square on this corner. I'll show you how to do it. like that, and then actually marking. So you can see my cut's pretty bang on. So, but if you're not confident you can get the cut bang on, cut it halfway and then pop your square and then mark the bottom and then flip the screen and then do the same to the other side. I am going to cut the other side still, but with this top side here, you want, in my case, I've gone all the way through here, and here I haven't gone all the way through here. I've just skimmed it because you don't want to cut through this mesh. But yeah, as long as you cut it all the way through to here and you just skim it along here, that's all you need to do. Okay, so I've flipped the fly screen over and you can see I've gone through on this side, and now I just need to skim, go through all the way to this little ridge here, and I need to skim it along here just so we go through approximately, you know, 2 or 3 mil, just so we can cut through this channel here. There we have it. Now, as you can see, this is nice and plumb, and that's what we want. If you're not sure you can cut a plumb and you're not going to be perfectly vertical with the angle grinder, just mark it from both sides and cut it halfway, and then flip it and cut it from the other side. So don't go straight through with the angle grinder. So now all we need to do is cut the other side and then cut this mesh back about 88 mil as well. And I'm going to leave that till tomorrow because it's getting dark and I don't want to annoy the neighbors or the kookaburras. Good morning, guys. So both sides have been cut, and now what we need to do is cut the mesh here. And to work out where to cut it, we just want to see where it's coming out of the channel, which is right here. So ideally we want to cut it about there, and we can see that if we put this other piece of frame in place, we need the mesh coming about there where my thumb is, which is about here. So the best way to do this is to run some tape along here and mark it with a long straight edge, you know, a pen, and you could even use this to mark it, anything that's straight, and then just draw a nice line and cut that with the grinder. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to freehand it with the grinder just because the grading on the mesh does actually keep the grinder blade straight. And like I said, I've done a lot of grinder work, so I'm confident I can cut that straight. But for the average Joe, I would recommend marking it with the tape. Just thought I'd show you this. You can see that the grading actually keeps the grinder blade straight. Your grinder blade can't be too fat. This grinder blade is the perfect width for the actual grading, but you can see that the 2 wires on either side of the blade actually keep it in line. So this is what I was talking about when saying that it's easy to cut straight, well, relatively easy to cut straight without marking. Okay, so I like to cut these sections here and here a bit concave, meaning I'm cutting them out a bit, because when you put the 2 panels together, if the 2 parts of the frame don't meet perfectly because you've cut this by hand, if the mitres there's a difference in the gap, what you can do is once you put it together, you can run the grinder blade down the meeting point of the 2 panels to even out the gap, and then you can hammer it together. So the actual join's gonna look a lot better. And you can't hammer it together if you don't cut these sections concave. And then I just sort of cut off any bits of metal that have been burred by the grinder. And if you don't cut these bits of metal off, going to make it hard to get the brace back in there. And I like to cut it off on the outside too, just because it's sharp and you don't want to be cutting your fingers. You can use a file for this. The razor blade on aluminium works a treat though. Okay, so before we put this back together, you can see that this brace is going to be encroaching on the wheel hole here. So when we go to put that plastic wheel back in, it's gonna stop it. On the last panel I did, I actually just cut this slightly bigger, then drilled another hole there. But what I'm gonna do on this one is I'm gonna cut this 15 mil shorter, and then that way we've got enough room for the wheel to go in. Now before we put it back together, it's gonna be good to mark where the rivet holes are gonna be. So you wanna line everything up perfectly, and then mark where you want your new rivet holes to be. I'm not going to mark anything here because the actual plastic stopper for the wheel hangs over here and the rivet will get in the way there. So I'm going to drill a new rivet hole about here, and I'm going to try and get one in between these two holes. Or you can try and match up the holes, which is quite difficult, but that does work as well. Now it's very tricky getting this in with the mesh not getting in the way, because if you see, the mesh hangs lower in spots and you need to sort of feed it in at the same time as the angles joining the frame together. So the easiest way to do this is by using these bad boys, the old pop sticks. Okay, so by putting the pop sticks in the channel of the frame, you can see that everything is in line now. And all we need to do now is hit it with this mallet together, bang bang, and that fly screen will go straight into the channel as we join the frame together. Okay, so now I've got some leather offcuts. I make belts for a living as well, so I got plenty of offcuts directly underneath the brace where the miter is. Don't put anything in the middle because you'll bend the frame. You want it directly under the force of where you're hitting it. So right here, you can use a towel, you can use some soft wood. Leather is one of the best things to use, but alternatively, you could put some soft wood and then put a towel over it, and that will also be fine. Okay, so I've changed positions because there was a bit of a bow in the ground there and it was hitting the actual frame. So this is a much flatter piece of ground, which will be much better for what we're doing. Alright, so I'm just using these straps to hold both sides together while I drill in the rivets. But before I do, you can see that this side here is pretty much all bang on perfect. I'm really happy with that side. But this side is not, and you can see the miter isn't perfect. So the reason why we cut the inside of the frame concave, remember? That is so now we can run the grinder blade down the center here and even out that joint. Alrighty. Alright, now we can see the joint is nice and even. Alright, the process has been repeated on both sides and I've hammered it together now, and you can see the joint is pretty good on both sides. So now we're ready to rivet this bad boy together. Alright, so you can see what we previously marked. Okay. go. Okay, so now all we need to do is hammer this wedge back into place, like so. And our door is more or less finished. There we go. Voila, a resized flat screen door. Whoops. Now we just need to put the wheel back in and install it on my balcony. Okay, so this is the way that the wheels adjust once you put the flat screen in, and it's just a Phillips head screwdriver. Simply turn it anti-clockwise to make it go down, or clockwise to go upwards. And these slot straight in here. There we go, and you can see you got the adjustment on the outside of the frame. Okay, as you can see, both fly screen doors are in, but when we put them together, the gap is not even. We're touching at the top and not at the bottom. So from the inside, there we go. We're going to come down here and adjust these clockwise. You can see that gap closing as I adjust this. There we go. Might adjust it one from this side as well. And one more from here. And there we go. Okay, it's a bit bigger at the top. So I'll just come down on this side. And that gap is pretty much all perfect now. And now all I need to do is install the door jamb on the other side, which is a piece of metal that just runs across this gap, and the job is done.